Hello and welcome to my channel. On this channel, we're going to be talking about true crime cases, and I'm really excited. I've been thinking about making this channel for a while, and it's finally time. I've always been interested in true crime, and I remember when the pandemic hit, true crime blew up. The way I used to binge watch true crime, and I still do. Even before it blew up, I think there was a channel called like ID Investigation, and that was my favorite channel of all time. I'm going to be doing my makeup as well while I talk so that I have something to do with my hands. Otherwise, I'll be moving them way too much. But I also love makeup, so it's a perfect combo. So enough talking. Let's jump into today's case. I'm starting off with a really heavy case, so just a little disclaimer. This case can be really upsetting. It involves the rape and murder of a child. So if you continue watching, keep that in mind. And if you feel that this video isn't for you, just click away, please, and watch something else. Today's video is the case of Angla Huggland, and it takes place in Sweden. Angla was born on the 5th of March 1998, and she lived in Stjärnsund. That's a small village in Dalarna in Sweden. And she stayed at home with her mom, her bonus dad, and her sister. Stjärnsund is a really cozy, cute little village. At the time, it was about 200 people living there. So it was really small. It's really beautiful. It has forests and lakes, and it's just typical Swedish nature, if you know what that looks like. It's really beautiful. And everyone knew each other. It was such a little village. So everyone knew each other. Everyone knew whose kids were who. Everyone knew whose mom and dad, whose grandma and grandpa. Like it was just that type of little town. Like people who knew Angla described her as a really social, talkative child. She loved hanging out with friends. She loved cycling. She loved playing sports. She wasn't shy at all. She just liked doing, what kids like doing. Saturday, the 5th of April, was just a normal day. Nothing out of the usual. Angla was gonna go to the football pitch and hang out with her friends, play some football and just have some fun. It was really nice weather outside, and her mom was gonna drive her. Angla's mom drove her to the football pitch, and she told her to call her when she was done and was gonna come home. When Angla was done, she called her mom and she asked her if she could take her bike home instead. And her bike had been outside in the village the whole winter, and she asked her mom if she could take her bike and cycle home instead of her mom coming to pick her up. And her mom was hesitant in the beginning because Angla didn't have a helmet with her because it wasn't planned at all that she was gonna cycle home. Her mom was like, you know what? Okay, sure. It was also Angla's first time cycling home. So her mom was also like, hesitant, which is understandable. So she said, well, you can cycle home, but I'm gonna call you and we should, just keep contact while you're cycling home. So Angla was like, okay. So she jumped on a bike and she started cycling home. Her mom called her and she wanted to know if, the bike was working, since it had been standing the whole winter. Maybe the tire was punctured or something, but her bike was fine. So she told her mom she's on her way home, she started cycling. And then her mom called her again. And then, yeah, Angla told her where she was. And her mom was like, okay, well, nice. Then she should be home, in about like 10 minutes, depending on how fast you're cycling. Her mom, is standing looking out the window and she's like, 10 minutes have gone. Angla should be home by now. Looking out the window, she's like, maybe I should go outside and, and meet her outside. But still, 10 minutes pass, no Angla. 15 minutes go, no Angla. So her mom, is trying to call her. She's not answering her phone. She's not worried at that time, she just thinks, okay, maybe she's, cycling in a slower pace. Her mom goes downstairs, but Angla is not there. So her mom jumped into the car and went to go look for Angla. So Angla's mom was driving and looking on nearby roads, roads that Angla maybe have passed or maybe took a wrong turn. So she was looking and driving and she didn't see Angla anywhere. Then Angla's mom got to a crossroad, and that crossroad would be the turn that Angla would have taken to get home. And she saw in the woods that Angla's bike was thrown in to the woods. And then she was like, wait, Angla is not strong enough to throw her bike in the woods, and she would never ever, like, just going to the woods, especially when it's her first time riding a bike home. She's like, why would you do that? She like got a bad feeling immediately. So around 4:30, Angla's mom called the police and she explained everything. And the police took it seriously straight away. They're like, okay, we're gonna send police cars. We're gonna just come out and help you. The police came and they went to where Angla's bike had been found, and they saw tire marks, and also they had found Angla's necklace, and it was at that same crossroads that her mom, had stopped and saw her bike in the woods. The sad thing about this is that that was found just 300 meters away from a house. She was so close to home. So they were like, okay, something feels kind of off here. So they already, started planning for a search. So just within a few hours after Angla's mom had called, a huge search was happening. Like there were helicopters everywhere, there were police dogs, a lot of locals from the village, had all gathered, and because they wanted to help, they had all heard what was happening. And this is such an important detail. And when I think about it, it's just so lucky how this happened. So there was a guy that was out that same day, and he had just bought a camera. He was, testing the different settings. So when he saw on the news, like, okay, there was a little girl that had gone missing, he went through his photos in his camera and he was like, oh my gosh, that's the girl. He had taken a photo of Engla when she was cycling home. And then he also had a photo of a red car as well. But he's like, oh my gosh, I have to go and tell the police. So he goes and he tells the police, okay, I have some photos that maybe you guys maybe are interested in. So the police look at his photos and they see the photo of Engla cycling home. And they were like, oh my gosh, yes, we want this photo. And then there was a photo of a car, red car, and they took that photo as well. But at the time, they didn't know how important this was. They took the guy's photos, they copied his photos. The search would continue. So after the police got these photos, they, try to see like, okay, which location it was, the timestamps between these photos, and, they're just trying to figure out if they can be useful to them. While the police are looking at the photos and, trying to find stuff, the search goes on through the night. And while the search is going on, Angla's phone is still active. Like it's still on, but they haven't found her phone. So, they kind of still hopeful. Like some people still are hopeful that maybe she, maybe she's still alive, because I don't think at that point, at the first day of the search, people were actually thinking that something really bad had happened. Maybe they just thought she got lost. So the next day, they're still looking for Angla. Like hundreds of people are involved, like police from other cities have come in, they're all trying to help. They all want to find Angla. The news has now, blown up. Like it's everywhere. Like the whole of Sweden knows that there's a 10-year-old girl that's missing. The police are still looking at the photos that they received, and they're trying to, still figure out who the car belongs to. Why was it there that day? Because if you actually look at the timestamps, it's just 55 seconds between the photo that was taken of Angla and then the photo taken of the car. It's just 55 seconds apart. So they're like, okay, there must be, like some reason that person was there. By Monday, the police finally identified the owner of the car. And that is like 2 days after Engla went missing. She went missing on Saturday and now Monday, and now they identified the owner of the car. They found out it was a guy named Anders Eklund, and he was a truck driver. And they wanted to arrest him straight away, but he was at work. And they were like, okay, we're not waiting till he gets home. Let's just go and arrest him. So he had stopped for a little break at work. And he was like at some road stop area, like where you stop if you're a truck driver and you need to have a break. So he was parked with his truck, and the police just, yeah, they went and found his truck and arrested him. It happened really smoothly. Like they just went to him, they told him really calm that he's arrested for the disappearance of a child, and he didn't resist. He just said okay, and he followed them. During the first questioning, they ask him, like, is this car yours? And they show him a photo, and he's like, yep, it's mine. And they're like, okay, well, can you explain to us what you were doing there? And he couldn't really answer. He was like, I was just in the area, you know. And they were like, yeah, but why? And he couldn't really give them a clear explanation. The police are like, okay, it's weird if you can't even give us an explanation to why he was here. And he's not even from Shenzhen. He stayed in a place called Skara, which is like 3.5, 4 hours away. So it's weird, like, if you don't even have an explanation to what you're doing in a place you don't even live in. Anders, he denies seeing Angla. He says, yeah, he hadn't seen her at all. And the police are like, well, you do understand that you are here because you were in the same place, the like exactly the time she disappeared. So, we have to ask you questions. But he kept denying. He's like, no, I have nothing to do with this. Once they checked his background, you will not believe what came up. This is not the first time he had been in trouble. He had a criminal record that went back years and years and years. And I'm just going to read a few just so you guys can understand how sick this guy is. So, back in 1995, he was convicted of attempted rape and assault. He had attacked a woman and tried to force her into sexual acts, and for that he got 1 year and 10 months in prison. That was in 1995. So in 1998, just 3 years afterward, he was convicted again, and this time for sexual coercion. And I hadn't heard that word before. I hope I'm saying it right. And that means forcing someone into sexual activity without their consent, often through pressure or threats. For that crime, he got 4 months in prison. After 1998, he was also convicted of exposing himself in public, like when you go outside and show your private area to people who don't want to see it. He was also convicted for supplying alcohol to kids that are under 18. He was convicted of assault, so he was violent to other people. In 2006, just 2 years before this case, before Angla disappeared, he was convicted of attempted rape again in a different place called Sandviken. So this guy it seems like he has a pattern, he knows exactly what he's doing. Those are just some of the convictions he's had from before. The police were shocked when they saw Anders' criminal background, and it just made them more worried, like, okay, what is this guy capable of? But it gets worse from here because Anders' DNA matched a murder from 2000. He was actually matched to a murder that was unsolved, but all they needed was his DNA. And that was an 8-year-old unsolved murder. And now they had the killer. It was him. Engla was not his first victim. And the police were shocked. They were so shocked. The unsolved murder was a woman called Angla Huggland, and she was 31 years old when she was murdered. So once this information became public that Anders was actually the one that killed Pernilla in 2000, like the whole nation, like the whole of Sweden were so shocked. They were all so shocked, and I get it. And a lot of people were discussing like why people like Anders with criminal records still get let out, without any supervision. They get to just walk freely, no one is watching them, even though he's been arrested so many times, he's been convicted so many times, but no one is watching him. He has a clear pattern, but no one is watching what he does after he comes out. And once I found this out, I just thought of her mom. I just felt how sad and scared her mom must have felt knowing that this guy, his DNA matched an unsolved murder and her daughter is missing. I felt so bad, like it's so horrible because you instantly think, oh my gosh, like what's happened to my daughter. So at this point, Anders had no idea that the police knew that his DNA matched the murder of Pernilla. So they were like, okay, we need to question him again. How should we do it? Like since we have this information, how are we still going to get a confession out of him for Engla, or just information, any type of information, because he hadn't said anything. They questioned Anders again and they're like, okay, we need you to talk, and he was not working with them. he was not cooperating at all. So that's when they told him that his DNA was a match for the 8-year-old unsolved case. He confessed to it. He said yes, he did it. And that's when he also confessed to the murder of Angla. And the police asked him, like, where is she? What did you do to her? And he did confess that he raped her before he killed her. And he told the police where her body was. The trial began and it was all over media. It was like such a huge case, like it was everywhere. Once the trial began, Anders, she had already confessed to both murders. In Sweden, if someone has committed a serious crime, they require the defendant to undergo extensive mental health assessments. They want to see if you were mentally ill, if you while you committed a crime. So that's what Anders had to do. The conclusion came back that Anders didn't suffer from any mental disorders while he committed these crimes, which plays a huge part in how they sentence people. Because if he did suffer from some mental disorder, then he would, instead of going to jail, he would go to like a place where you get psychiatric care instead of going to jail. There was so much evidence against Anders. There was evidence linking Anders to both murders. They had the photos, they had his earlier convictions. So there was so much against him. And I feel so bad for the families being at the trial, listening to all horrible details that you never want to listen to about a family member, stuff that has happened. And especially Angla was just 10 years old. And even Pernilla's family was at the trial because he was also being convicted for that murder as well. After all the evidence was reviewed, Anders was found guilty, which is such a relief. He was sentenced to life in prison, which is the highest sentence you can get in Sweden. Anders was transferred to a high security prison, and this case is one of the most discussed cases in modern Swedish history. This case was a real sad case, and I just feel so bad for the victims' families. It's just so horrible to imagine, what they have gone through. It's just so horrible. And to think Angla was just a 10-year-old girl. She had so much life left and it was just taken away from her. It's just so horrible. Like it breaks my heart. Like it's just so sad, and stuff like this should never happen. Like it's just horrible. A lot of people blamed the justice system because they let a man like Anders just walk around freely without any supervision. No one was watching over him, even though he had a clear pattern of committing crimes, which I totally get it. That should not have ever been allowed to happen. Angla was just a 10-year-old girl living her life. She had so much life ahead of her. She had a future, and that was just taken away from her. She didn't deserve any of this. That was the case of Angla Huggland. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and I will see you in my next video.